I studied this old tree carefully. If I make a mistake even 1 iota, it will fall in the wrong place, and this will cause a lot of problems. I was still upset that it had to be cut down at all, but the thunderstorm and all those lightning strikes forced it to happen. Yes, I said, blows. That is, more than one. Anyone who says that lightning never strikes twice in the same place clearly does not understand lightning. This tree is probably the oldest and certainly the tallest and widest in the whole area. Before lightning struck it for the 3rd time, its height was almost 55 meters. How do I know, you ask? Well, last weekend I cut it off L, and the height from the top to the cut was 15.5 meters. The second or middle cut was just over 15 meters, and I measured the rest of it right after I removed the middle section, mainly to make sure I cut enough so that the rest would fit past the neighbor's house. Just in case. The challenge was the maximum for today. If you haven't already guessed, I'm a lumberjack. Or rather, I used to be a lumberjack, and now I manage feelings and sell wood. We have been living in this old house for a long time. In fact, when we first bought it, we only had 2 neighbors. One of them, Josh, retired long before we moved, and below, at the foot of the hill, old Fraser lived. She also lived here for a long time, a very long time. Now, about 10 years later, an entire housing estate has sprung up around us, and most of the reasons we moved here have evaporated. Most trees was cut down to make way for roads, driveways, and houses. Everything looks sterile, if you ask me, sterile and urban. In the process of obtaining permission to cut down the tree, the city felt it necessary to limit the number of days that any part of the tree could remain in place, and also limited the time after cutting down each part of the tree to a short period for its removal. Once I've cut down the last part of it, I'll have about 3 days to cut it into firewood and haul it away as planned. The remaining part was about 24 meters high, and the base of the trunk was about 3 meters in diameter. The upper part is a little less than 80 meters in diameter, so I have a lot of work to do. It took me several long days to cut it up for firewood. The whole cutting down of this tree became somewhat publicized when some tree protectors tried to stop anyone from cutting down this old tree by saying that it could live and, if looked after, would live another 200 years. The case went to court, where the judge ruled that the tree was dead. Foresters, representatives of a third party, studied the tree and the results of lightning strikes, and noted that there was no more sap in it and there never would be, so the tree is dead. The branches do not know about it yet, but they'll find out by fall. Josh and the Frasers, the old lady and the judge, only benefited because I gave them all the wood. We've already filled Josh's woodshed with the top and middle portions, and today's wood pile will completely fill the Frasers' woodshed, with perhaps enough left over to extend 2 or 3 logs beyond both sheds. I was evaluating the entire project and making cutting decisions when Josh approached me with his movie camera. Okay, it's actually a video camera, but I still call them movie cameras. Old habits die hard. Hi, neighbor. Do you mind if I record what's happening? No. In fact, I'd like to get myself a copy when we're done, if you don't mind. With pleasure. Would you like me to tape your entire house while I do this? Do you think you can write down everything? The tree falling and all that? No problem. It will be a pleasure to help you, son. You've been a damn good neighbor all these years. When you move out, I'll miss you. Old Josh, when discussing anything, measured everything over the years. He was always one of those who looked far ahead. Most people sometimes didn't notice this and gave him strange looks. Sometimes he viewed hours, days, weeks, and months as seconds. I'm not going to move anytime soon, Josh. We've already talked about this enough. Yes, they did. He will be sorry. To tears. He was looking at the front yard. We were standing next to his veranda as I had gone there while inspecting the impact zone. Yes, not too much though, I said. Everything is born, grows, and then dies. This is the cycle of life. Some things die a little earlier than they should. Yes, sometimes nature does what it wants, no matter what anyone thinks. Everything is correct. Old Fraser, the judge and I were definitely lucky. Our 2 wood sheds will be filled to capacity. And the wood from this tree and the old yellow cedar that you cut down for me will be enough for heating for several years. I am thankful. No problem. I needed to do something with the tree. I definitely won't use it up myself, at least not now. So, have you decided everything? Will you finish the job? Yes. Quiet. I can imagine how surprised the people from the mayor's office will be when they see that it was removed today and not over the weekend. They say there will be a hurricane on Friday. This tree must not be allowed to be caught in a stormy wind. You know that a film crew will be here in a minute, right? Yes, this is another reason why I decided to do this, is all today. On the weekends, all the Toms, Dicks, and Harrys either protest or stare and drink. I hope I don't wake the dead or disturb anyone while I'm cutting it down. Otherwise, it would be a damn shame. It seems like I have too much to do and not enough time to get it all done. Oh, I think you can handle it. So you still want me to call those people right after you cut him down? Yes. First to the lawyer, and then, about 20 minutes later, to Mary. Fine. I hope you know what you're doing, Charlie. If what I'm thinking about happens, Mary might get here in time. I have already calculated everything in my mind several times. You know, don't you? Well, not exactly the way it's done today, I would say. A tree is a tree, Josh. He looked at me intently and then smiled. He shook his head and turned away, heading into his house. As he climbed the stairs to the veranda, he called out to me, looking over his shoulder, "Give me 10 minutes to set up the camera upstairs and then call it a day." "It will be done, Josh." I went to my pickup and pulled out a John Zared chainsaw with a 16-inch blade. It was a monster, and I hadn't used it for quite some time. They don't make them like that anymore. It had a chain with refractory inserts in the teeth, and it was very sharp and deadly. She could cut through steel. This is exactly why the carbide chain was invented, to cut off nails and other things buried in tree trunks. The motor had just been rebuilt, and the day before I had personally sharpened the chain on my grinder with a diamond wheel. This chainsaw cuts very quickly and has plenty of power for the job ahead. Because this was in the city limits, I had to install a muffler on it, to Josh and I's disgust. We both grew up working with loud, nasty chainsaws and loved the way they screamed as they chewed through large logs like butter. There was a whole section in the tree cutting permit that required a muffler, so I had to follow the rules. I will follow the rules. They will have to follow them too when the dust settles. I looked around again and then began to line up with the tree for the final cut. I had 3 wedges, 2 on the south end and 1 on the north end. They should help slightly correct the fall of this tree. If I've got it right, the wedges in the barrel will cause it to suddenly come off, like spin, or as Chris, my wife, would say, pirouette, making a full rotation before beginning its downward fall. Thus, I knew that it would move away from the remaining stump about 30 to 60 centimeters in a northerly direction, and the fall of the tree would be altered due to the lack of support under that part. My calculations are that it will fall in a west-northwest direction and land almost perfectly along the sidewalk. But since it had been a long time since I felled such a tree, I might have gotten rusty and made a little mistake. I hope no. I really wanted it to fall perfectly. Television news reporters usually make a person strive to do everything right. I looked back briefly and saw several pickup trucks pull up next to a TV van on the next street. 2 of the guys in those pickups were talking to old Fraser. She pointed in my direction and they all smiled widely. The atmosphere was almost like a party. Truth be told, it broke my heart. This old tree and I had our own history, and I never thought that I would be the one cutting it down, especially like this. I checked the saw again and seeing that Josh was ready, started it up. It worked smoothly, although a little too quietly. I hated that damn muffler. I began sawing the base of the tree, trying to maintain the angle as accurately as possible. Once I stopped and knocked out some more wedges on the south side. The northern one was fine. I saw and felt movement just before I heard a crash. I stepped back, putting the saw away in a motion practiced over years of work. Turning it off, I took 3 more steps, leaving myself some room to run, just in case. Sometimes even the best fellers miss something. Sometimes trees can resist even in their death throes. Just as I thought, it slid forward a little and then began to pirouette. I watched as the top began to tilt and saw that I had done everything perfectly. Smiling, I began to climb onto the porch of the house. As I climbed the top step, I heard a pleasant crunch of wood and metal. There was a small squeal and then silence. I didn't even look back because I knew it felt right. It wasn't as loud as I thought. I was surprised. Glancing at Josh, who was still filming on the upper veranda, I gave him a thumb and pinky sign to call. He waved his cell phone in the air and pointed at the news van. "Live from the scene," he said exaggeratedly loudly. I understood and muttered in response. "Live." I saw the reporter move closer, but the cameraman remained near the van, which had a clear view of the front, side, and back of our house. I thought it would soon be very interesting here. I opened the front door, still holding the silent saw, and entered the living room. I looked at the coffee table that I'd spent 3 months putting together for Chris. It was in its usual place, except for the underwear laid out on it. I saw a bottle of wine and 2 glasses standing in the middle, neither of which had a coaster under them. Another painful thought pierced my mind. She never took kindly to this table, even though I spent a lot of time, labor, sweat, and love making it for her. I put the saw down and pulled out from the closet where it had been collecting dust for the past 6 months the $240 backpack that Chris simply had to have when she started her new job. I unzipped it and started stuffing my underwear from the coffee table into it. Then he moved and picked up a black dress and tights. Walking around the table, I bent down and picked up the man's shirt and socks lying underneath. Then he lifted up the man's trousers and took out his wallet. I opened my wallet, wondering why Chris always turned his stereo up so damn loud. I guess I was lucky, because if it hadn't been turned on, they could have heard a multi-ton tree trunk fall on their cars. It had its effect on them. I was glad that before I cut that tree down, those 10 buckets of cat litter were underneath them. I stopped to pick up Chris's purse and open it. He took out some keys and a wallet and then threw it into his backpack. I was thinking about her new truck. She loved this car very much, modified it so that it was almost identical to her best friend's car. The only major difference was that her truck was a gas truck and her friend's was a diesel truck. Chris's truck was brand new, 4-door, 4-wheel drive, with custom wheels and a stereo system. The one in front of her car looked, well, they both looked the same now that I thought about it, only the one in front was still collateralized by the lender. Pete, my former best friend, owed about $32,000 on this monster. Chris traded in her Beamer for a pickup and ended up owing nothing on the truck due to what her car was valued at the time. She allowed a friend to talk her into insuring her car with the state's minimum liability coverage instead of the full coverage that I recommended. Now that would suck. Nice truck, fully paid for, and flat as a pancake. That same friend somehow managed to lower his insurance from full coverage to minimum liability. His problem is that he owes a hell of a lot of money on a car that is now worth nothing. Interesting, I thought, picking up the saw and backpack. I walked up to our bedroom door, and through the closed door I could clearly hear music. I also heard groans and groans. I tried to open the door and found that it was locked. Well, that's what I thought. Chris always locked the door carefully when we had sex, even though we don't have children. I placed the backpack next to the expensive suitcase that I had already pulled out there earlier, and, moving back a little to make it easier to swing it, I launched the saw. I heard muffled screams as the chain cut into the door around the lock. It took 2 or 3 seconds to cut the door around the lock. I pushed it and saw a naked Pete standing by the bed. He looked slightly scared. Okay, more than a little, maybe terrified. Chris stood on the other side and was already sobbing, trying to shield her body from my gaze, as if I should have cared at all. I nodded to Pete and revved the throttle for effect before idling the saw. The dark-colored chain spinning around the chainsaw bar must have looked quite scary to him, as he lost all the color from his face. The doors are through me and there is a window. Choose wisely, jumper. I've always wanted to say that last part. It's a shame that I finally got this chance under these circumstances. Pete looked at Chris in fear, then turned and jumped through the window glass, screen and all. I swore, now I will have to replace the mesh glass and frame. Damn idiot. I never thought that he would break a window like that. I walked to the window and looked down onto our veranda. He was lying on his side, holding his ankle. From here, it was clear that it was broken. He couldn't escape anywhere too quickly. I put the saw down and turned my attention to my wife. She cried and tried to say that she was very sorry, that this was not what I thought, and so on and so forth. As if I'm some kind of idiot who can't understand that this is the 10th time they've been playing family here. Chris, shut up. Listen to me very carefully because I will only say this once. I paused when she fell silent. I could see that she was actually shocked by the tone of my voice. I'll start with the facts, since you don't have much time. Mary has already been called. She's 15 minutes away. She will probably try very hard to arrive in less than 15 minutes, so keep that in mind. Remember also that she is very attached to her guns, and only yesterday she bought a 12-gauge pump-action shotgun. Understood? She looked very scared and nodded at me. Fine. I would advise you to get dressed as quickly as possible. Grab enough clothes and put them in that damn $400 suitcase you bought last month. When you head out the door, grab your backpack too. It contains the asshole's clothes, your dress, and the things that were lying downstairs on the coffee table that I collected for you for several months. Your purse is there, but our shared credit cards and bank card are not. Your personal credit card is there again. I also took the asshole's credit cards and his bank card from his wallet. I think Mary will want to take them. Did you catch it? She nodded again, tears running down her face. I had to look away and pause for a minute. It hurt me more than I expected. It's hard to learn not to trust and love someone you've relied on for almost 10 years. Your truck and the asshole's truck appear to be broken. A large tree fell on them a few minutes ago. Somehow you both missed all the fuss. I would recommend that you exit through the back door since Mary is already on her way and there is a news van with a camera in front of the entrance. I also recommend helping the asshole out the back gate, calling a taxi and taking his arrogant ass to the hospital. His ankle is broken. Oh yes. If you haven't realized yet, it's all over between us. The divorce papers are in that suitcase. You've already received a summons and don't come home anytime soon. The next time you come here, you must be accompanied by the sheriff or his deputies. Clear? She nodded and burst into tears. I turned and walked out so I could be downstairs when Mary got there. I didn't want her to kill one of our halves, and I knew that her hot head could lead to her being blind and stupid at the most crucial moment. I didn't know exactly when they started the affair behind our backs. I did not care. For me, the fact that they did it was reason enough. Today, my instrument is wood. I knew about them for a whole month and tried to hide my disgust for her and for him. I discovered them by accident, and then tried very hard not to give myself away. I wanted to kill them both, and I'm sure that if one or both of them had been in their trucks this morning, I would still have cut down that tree. Thank God I regained my sanity before I did something stupid, and now I have to stop Mary from doing something stupid. I hope so. As I stepped off the porch, the crowd moved closer. TV cameras were filming the tree, the battered trucks, my house, and Josh proudly standing with his back to Chris's truck, smiling and talking to the reporter. He had one leg kind of behind him, leaning on what was the driver's side door. He is the nicest person you could ever meet. He's definitely not some kind of crazy person. Do you know that he takes care of us old people? He always helps us, especially when he knows that we cannot do something, and he never takes anything in return. Damn good man. Damn good. You wouldn't say he's bad with a chainsaw, sir? The reporter glanced in my direction every now and then, as if assessing my mood. Josh laughed out loud. Honey, that man standing over there may be the best lumberjack in the country. He doesn't miss. Don't make mistakes. Puts them where he needs them and never misses. For more than 10 years, he held the title of state fair felling champion. I've seen him drop 55-foot trees with internal stresses on a dime, in the wind, on a hillside. No, ma'am, he's not bad with a chainsaw. Unless you're on his bad side, then all bets are off. I wouldn't want Josh to be so nice to me right now. I didn't expect the whole country to know that I was a professional. My story will be hard to believe if it ends up in court. I turned around and saw my lumberjack friends driving up to the house. Noticed that Jed had his portable hydraulic log splitter behind the truck. I guessed that they would help me split the log into firewood. "Hello, Charlie, how are you?" "It could have been better, Joe. Now I need to clean up." I liked the idea with the cat litter. "Cat litter?" "Yes. We were wondering why you bought 10 9-kilogram buckets of cat litter at the grocery store the other day. We didn't think you had a cat. Smart." "Yes." "Well, don't talk about it, okay? I just didn't want the townspeople to get agitated by oil or antifreeze running down the drain." "Boy, remind me never to make you angry," came a voice from behind Joe. Max walked around Joe to shake my hand. His grip was strong and his smile was sincere. "Is this wicked brother of mine still alive?" "Yes, Max. I think he broke his ankle diving out of my bedroom window. Thank God he didn't end up in the jacuzzi. I'd hate to have to clean his remains out of her too. I'm really sorry this happened, Charlie. I never understood this skunk. He may be my brother, but I seriously think someone switched him at birth and ran off with my real one. It's not your fault, Max. I know how it goes. I never thought he would do this to my wife. Moreover, I never thought that Chris would do this to me." They both looked away for a moment and then began to grumble. Joe broke the mood that had begun to hang over me by turning to the work at hand. "Well, as soon as these TV people get out of the way, we can collapse this log. Max, run for your Johnsared. I'll take the belt so we can yank it off the trucks. Hey, Charlie, is it okay if I park the trailer over there in your driveway?" Jed came up to me and patted me on the shoulder. At that moment, I felt pleased. "Hi, Jed. Yes, let's. My house is at your disposal. Sorry for, well, you understand. Jed, you and Betty knew everything that was going on, but you kept quiet because you were afraid of what I would do. I respect that, although it hurt me that you didn't tell me. God, what could I do? Betty was Chris's best friend, and you were one of my best friends. It was hard for me not to tell you, but Betty was sure that Chris would end this affair soon. She believed that Chris had to have a good reason for doing what she was doing. I was sure that you didn't do anything wrong, but these women fill all sorts of nonsense into their heads and won't let go. I didn't know what to do, Charlie. I really didn't know. It's okay, Jed. I forgive you. You are my friend. I know that. And I understand why you did this. But now everything is very neglected, right? Yes. Last night, Betty found out about everything from me. I reprimanded her sternly. She's still upset. She called me recently. It seems like all this crap is shown on TV today, too. They even filmed the asshole jumping out of your bedroom window naked. I hope someone recorded this on tape. Josh caught most of it on his camera, but the TV stations probably got some good footage, too. There will be something to record in an album. I turned and walked away, wanting to be alone. I saw Mary speeding up the street like hell and knew I was going to need my best conversation skills. It was clear from the way she was driving that she was very angry. She stopped with a squeal about a meter away from me and jumped out of her pickup truck with a new gun in her hands. Her hair was tousled, and the look in her eyes was simply stunning. I would never want to see her get mad at me. I directly heard the characteristic sound of a shot from a 12-gauge pump-action shotgun with a cartridge case being chambered.